horrors of black male slaves by white women. Let's get to it.
White women were not passive bystanders to the slave economy. They were co-conspirators. They bought, sold, and owned slaves. In fact, about 40...
That's crazy, because I didn't even know white women was buying slaves. And they tell y'all that. I feel like it's obvious that white women during slavery probably was a little more wicked than the men. But we gonna let this rock for a minute or two before I say something.
percent of the slave owners were white women. The more slaves a woman had, the more power she held. Parents gave their daughters more enslaved.
The more slaves a white woman had, the more power she held. Y'all know what that mean? Do y'all know what that mean? If you look at the feminist movement, white women is basically acting like, oh my God, we're being dominated by our men and we're so weak and fragile. Whole time in history, according to this information, they was running things.
People than land.
So she look Mexicano. She don't even look white.
And so, to a white Southern woman, owning slaves became tied to her very identity. This is the true story of how white women treated their black slaves.
All right, let's get into it. Let's get it.
Slavery in the US lasted for more than 400 years, and in that time, the system shaped generations and generations of people. A system that created this psychological distortion. White people dominated the country. They created a violent and oppressive system to terrorize the black community. They used
Dang, my boy just hanging like
lynchings, beatings, and savage treatment to torment the masses.
And they taking slavery out of the school books in Florida, man. Y'all be talking about, oh, but y'all wasn't alive then. Yeah, you wasn't alive then either, but you still reaping benefits, though. You still reaping the benefits. Don't let nobody tell you, oh, but y'all wasn't alive then. Slavery's over. Well, then why y'all? So then give up y'all white privilege then. You still benefiting from it.
Even when there wasn't violence, there was segregation. Communities, housing, and the criminal justice system used discriminatory policies. Racism pervaded all aspects of American society. White families gained huge amounts of material benefits and privileges from this racial hierarchy. Before the Civil War, in the South,
Nah, my son got the dooties. Look, my son got the joints.
American white women couldn't vote. When they got married, the husband became the head of the
Shorty is not it. Like, she is not it, Brody. Shorty had big as mine.
household, and the woman was the heart of the home. Women were considered the property of their husbands. Their mobility and freedom were severely limited. For example, if a woman wanted to travel, she would need
Why he look like that? He looked like somebody from Dr. Seuss book.
a male chaperone. The abuse was considered a normal way to control a woman. They were expected to remain cheerful, pleasant, obedient, and faithful, while
Look at Shorty head. She got the black girl forehead.
their husbands had affairs and female slaves. These women knew that the mixed-race slave children on their properties were their husbands' offspring. That's why many white women wanted freedom of their own, power to turn the narrative. That's where slavery came into play. Most people
My son got the flatted. My son don't got no lips. He look like somebody's grandmother.
know that George Washington had slaves. They took care of his Mount Vernon home, but
My son from Mount Vernon. That's right next to the BX. You heard? That's right there. That's right. You could certain parts of the Bronx. You could walk to Mount Vernon. I didn't even know Washington was. He was bulling up that way. That's crazy. If y'all talking about New York, Mount Vernon, that's crazy. See, yo, up north be doing it big. We got George Washington. We jacking him. Y'all jacking him? We jacking him?
few people know
First off, they violated him. My son mad black. He was purple.
that Martha, his wife, was the one who drastically increased the slave population there. When the couple got married in 1759, George owned about 18 slaves, but Martha owned 84.
This woman owned more slaves than a white man, bro. You see how? Yo, do you see how they be trying to act like they victims in history? And that's how a lot of these white women be getting y'all feminist black women too. Y'all be doing all the heavy lifting for them. They really be trying to make it seem like they y'all and they struggling and they second class citizens. But according to this information and this history, they was running shit. That ass. They was valid.
high number of people Martha owned might be unusual, but the fact that she had black slaves is not. She and many other white women were violent and active participants in the slave trade. Having many enslaved people increased a woman's chances of finding a good husband. After marriage, white women went to court to keep legal ownership over their slaves, and in many cases, they won. That's because
white women went to court They went to court, and in many cases, they won. This is over property, slaves. This is the business of selling humans and body parts, and they winning. But if you let them tell their narrative, it's like they weren't even we weren't allowed to go to school. We weren't allowed to go to court. Men did what we want.
For women, slavery was their freedom. In the past, historians believed that white women didn't have a significant role in slavery. They based their conclusions on the writings of a small group of white women from the South. However, Jones Rogers, an associate professor of history at the University of
Jones Rogers looking a little bit like Rhiannon.
California, Berkeley, used a different source: interviews with black people, apprentices.
Listen to this.
Apprenticeship was another form of labor. Servitude often restricted married white women, but she also explained that Southern families frequently bypassed.
You could tell she hate her husband. Look, she like this.
Or overlooked these restrictions. Families could transfer property to daughters or other female relatives.
Look at my son Gee. Like, my son look different. My son body different. If he ran down in your inbox on Facebook dating on his, you giving him a chance? And he owned 3 cows and a lot of land. Remember, he owned a lot of land.
Relatives, under the condition that it would remain separate from marital assets. Southern women could, and did, create what we now refer to as prenuptial agreements, or documents like.
Wait, Southern women, they invented a prenuptial agreement. They invented prenups. Did y'all know that?
Deeds of trust, deeds of gift, and wills, which granted the wife control over all the property she.
Yo, white women you see how witty and conniving these folks is? That's the thing. Like, I don't know about y'all, but my parents told me white people ain't dumb. I don't know why. Y'all can sit there and think they dumb. They be playing dumb.
Already possessed, or would acquire during her marriage. In Louisiana, women could ask the court to establish separate marital estates if their husbands exhibited imprudent financial management. For example, if their husband failed to budget their expenses, accumulated debt, spent too much, etc. In other words, there were 2 distinct systems that coexisted: a genuine patriarchy alongside an actual framework of legal and financial influence held by white women. There was a common misconception that white women were sheltered and delicate. They kept the.
That's what I'm saying. There is a big misconception that white women were sheltered and delicate. That's why, when you at the job and something happened to them, they face some type of adversity. They be like, oh my God, I'm just breaking down. Me, anything wrong on my job, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm breaking down my mental health. I'm not being no super nigga. I be acting just like white women at the workplace. Shit, you know me?
Household clean of all the impurities of the outside world. But that is absolutely not true. Slave traders, travelers, merchants, city officials, and former black slaves all attested to the presence of white women in 19th century slave markets. When slavery was at its peak, women also sold and bought black servants from the comfort of their own homes, many times within local social.
Imagine you sitting in your crib and you just ordering niggas like it's DoorDash. You just ordering up some black families like it's DoorDash, bro. Your life was nothing but a DoorDash order away if you was black back in these times.
Social networks. Because of their widespread influence, white women created a completely different market of enslaved wet nurses. Now, you might be wondering why these white women.
Y'all already know them nurses be up to no damn good. What is a wet nurse?
Felt the need to tear black women from their families to nurse their children. One actual report said that white women who were constantly having babies felt like a slave in their own homes. Black women could.
See, that's white women that don't want to sit at home and raise kids. I don't know why other nationalities trying to adopt these things, and that's why they voted for Trump on y'all ass. That's why 57% of white women voted for Trump on y'all ass. They feel like slaves in their own home. Black women always been lit at taking care of families and kids. Why do you think in slavery times they would have them nursing the kids? Because black women a lot of times did a better job. Now, whether that's because they had to or was forced to. Foreigners in general, Asian women, a lot of Asian women in certain small Asian islands, they be marrying a broke dude and then turning him to a whole millionaire, starting a whole family business and whatnot. Females just non-melanated females just move a little more differently than white females. They just build differently.
could ease that burden. So, it was easier to buy a wet nurse who would take care of such responsibilities. Depending on her financial status, the white woman could hire, borrow, or purchase an enslaved wet nurse. This
Imagine borrowing a black woman wet nurse. You know your ass ain't coming out of that slave incantation at all. Ain't no such thing as no borrowing.
gave white women the power to pursue social events, while someone else took care of their newborn. Some, but not all, white women were incredibly brutal to their enslaved. They were so violent that their husbands had to restrain them. For example, a wealthy white woman often invested in enslaved men and women so that they would be forced to reproduce and give her more slaves.
Bro, so this lady's buying black families and forcing them to grape each other. Do y'all see how sick in the head these people is?
Historical records kept track of a woman called Henrietta Butler who was forced to have sex with enslaved black men to have a child. She was then forced to nurse her mistress's child, but many other women suffered a similar fate. Masters often raped their enslaved servants to make sure they had an ample supply of wet nurses.
Nah, they on some Diddy shit.
White women from affluent households also ran brothels, especially the women who had many male and female slaves. By 1860, nearly half of all African slaves in the Americas were in the United States. That was about 4 to 6 million people. Based on reports from the 1860 census, 393,973 white individuals owned 3,950,528 black individuals.
Whoever invented slavery and colorism on a psychological level, that nigga nice, boy. He lit. Because no matter where you go in the world, I don't care if you in China, they not gonna put the Asians this complexion on TV. They gonna put the pale ones. You go to India, they not gonna put, y'all know them Indians be darker than us. They be darker than Sudanese. They at the bottom of the caste. They lucky to even be on the caste system, let alone be at the bottom. They not showing them on TV. You tell me I have 4 million slaves ran by 300,000 people? 4 million. Yo, what's wrong with black people? It's 4 million of y'all and 300,000 of them? And nobody turned up on them? Y'all would have had to spend a block on them. I couldn't have been in slavery.
Only about 1.5% of the white population
She's kind of like my grandma
in the U.S. owned slaves. It's been over 150 years since slavery legally ended in 1865. But the true trauma wasn't just the
Okay, I see my son. They got the black man with the perm. Y'all had perms going back then. Okay, I see you, my boy. My boy.
experience of slavery, but also the aftermath, when hopes for equality and acceptance were crushed in the 1880 to 1890s due to a shift in beliefs about
we can't even get slaved in peace.
blacks and whites. When the Civil War came and it was time to free the enslaved, many white women retaliated. Female slave owners resisted the change by letting the Union authorities know they were loyal. There were many cases where female slave owners sought compensation when the American government abolished slavery in the District of Columbia. Others wanted to keep their property by any means necessary. They went as far as to move their enslaved people away from the areas affected by the war, in a practice known as refugeeing. When the Civil
Oh yeah, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I want y'all opinion on this video. Forget my reaction. Just give me y'all opinion on this video, period.
War ended, many white women negotiated labor conditions with freed black people. They tried to maintain control over the young African Americans by taking their children as apprentices. Apprenticeship was another form of labor, although it was better than
gonna make no money.
Complete slavery.
That's just like the prison system. This journey ain't never really stopped.
It was still not freedom. Ex-slaves were expected to work under the same master or mistress, often for meager wages, and a specific time set. Many apprentices worked for the same person that used to be their mistress, and it was not that better than the life they had before. W.E.B. Du Bois, an American sociologist, wrote something about it. He said a slave went free, stood for a brief moment in the sun, then moved back again towards slavery. This brief moment in the sun was when black communities, along with support from the Freedmen's Bureau, started establishing schools, social assistance, and some legal protections. However, this progress was largely undermined.
See, we was lit till Martin Luther King came along and integrated everybody.
By the white Southern elite. That includes white women. They swiftly passed laws known as the Black Codes. Their goal was simple: reintroduce obligations, burdens, and restrictions that would mimic slavery. The Black Codes were designed to take away the voting rights of Black people. They were meant to stop them from becoming juries or state militias. Instead, the white people would create this complex system where freed Black people could still be controlled. White men and women put in place contract and vagrancy laws. They led to a popular peonage labor system. Peonage is a type of involuntary servitude based on claimed debt. By 1915, at least 6 former slaveholding states had laws that made it possible to force Black people
Look at my son, got no shoes on, boy. Look how they doing them.
to work against their will. For example, if a Black person was found guilty of vagrancy, they were forced to work in the convict lease system. This system brought in substantial profits for the wealthy white women and men who both sold and bought the labor of those who were
Go to jail now, you working, and your license plate is made by people in jail. They're not making no money off that.
convicted. Experts found a memoir of a white woman called Rebecca Felton. Take a look at this colorized
First off, look how shorty look, shorty shirt.
interview from 1929. Felton was a former slave owner who grew up during the Civil War.
She kind of looked like Bad
To
Baby.
Washington, 50 years and a little more.
She looked just like Bad Baby. I really want to pull it up so bad. And oh my God, I really feel
Ago. I saw all the people around there and been with the president. I was one of the board of lady managers for.
Nah, hold on. She looked like Bad Baby. Hold up. She dead looked like Bad Baby. Stop playing with me. You could tell when she was younger, she was looking like Bad Baby.
The Chicago Exposition. And I served my full time in Chicago.
In her memoir, she talked about the corruption in Georgia's legal system. She mentioned that there were cases where judges were elected by a dominant faction. During this time, a Black person could be sentenced to hard labor for 10 years for stealing just 3 eggs or a bowl of milk. She also noted that a 15-year-old Black girl in Atlanta got a 5-year penitentiary for taking 50 cents from another Black child.
Yo, 5 years for taking 50 cents from another Black person? It's supposed to be safe to rob other Black people. It's supposed to be safe. Damn, only y'all get to abuse Black people? That's crazy.
The dominant faction made a huge amount of money, about
That nigga fed up. He already knew where we was going with this in the future. Look.
$500,000 a year from the convict leasing system, and judges who sent strong Black people to prison had much better chances of being elected. But
What you mean strong Black people?
control wouldn't have been possible without the threat of violence. That's where groups like the Ku Klux Klan came into play.
I need women to know that you're not limited to anything
Yo,
other
ads are
than
like
living your
low-key
life.
traumatizing.
They intimidated, brutalized, and murdered Black people across the nation. The Women's KKK was a separate but affiliated racist group of white Protestant women.
First off, I didn't even know they had such thing as a women's KKK. Did y'all know that? If y'all got any information on that, please comment down below on this, because this sounds wild. I keep telling y'all, white women just as bad as... Listen.
It got more members through empowerment feminism. The first version of the KKK emerged in Pulaski, Tennessee, after the Civil War. It was established by men who were upset about the newly liberated Black population. They were angry about their political rights and sought purpose, thrill, and a socially accepted platform where they could be violent. These early KKK members wanted something new, but they wanted to keep it under a veil of secrecy, and they did just that. The KKK created a strict organization with many ceremonies that would go perfectly with their hateful, anti-Reconstruction goals. During the starting days of the Klan, women didn't actively participate, but they did sew their husbands' and family members' clothes for the ceremonies. Women also had a symbolic role to play. One of the goals of these extremists, as they saw it, was to shield pure and innocent.
Nah, that... You got a white man look dressed up as a Black man. He looked like Mel Gibson. That's what's wicked about this. He really looked like Mel Gibson. Hold on. What's his name? Mel. My son looked like Mel Gibson. We don't care about none of that Trump support. My son looked like Mel Gibson, my boy. Hold on. That's Mel Gibson.
Women from the frightening Black people who were now a threat. Especially in its early years, the male Klan held 2 conflicting views of femininity and womanhood. One was a fantasy, and the other was a concession to real people. In their minds, white Protestant women were pure, virtuous beings whose main purpose was to support and serve men. In return, men would safeguard these vulnerable ladies from those sexually aggressive black men. In the second phase of the Klan came the Women's KKK. This was a related but separate group specifically for white Protestant women.
They was infiltrating and doing all type of smear campaigns. Yo, the Women's KKK wasn't no joke, man. I need y'all to drop comments down below on that, man.
Early days of the WKKK were marked by conflicts within the Klan itself. One leader of the male Klan started a group called the Camellias. It focused on women and advocated for white supremacy so that he could increase his own influence. Another leader joined forces with a secretive women's society called the Queens of the Golden Mask. Eventually, the Golden Mask group prevailed and became the WKKK. It was the first authorized in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1923. At its height, the WKKK had branches in every state, especially in Arkansas, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Indiana. Much like the male KKK, the WKKK had a structured system. Interestingly, the system had similar aspects to the Roman Catholic hierarchy. There were positions like the imperial commander.
I don't know who them dirty ass people really thought they was in the Vatican. They really thought they was valid like that.
Claylifts, clocards, cligraps, claybees, along with the Klexter Chlorogos. People in these positions were responsible for enforcing Klan rules. They recruited members, collected dues, organized events, and so on. But all of these roles and activities were influenced by racism, nationalism, fear of outsiders, and a determination to protect the family. In contrast to their male counterparts, the WKKK didn't often participate in lynching or other violent acts, aside from a 1924 incident.
What's going on? Wait, hold on. Why are they on the floor like that?
Counterparts, the WKKK didn't often participate in lynching or other violent acts, aside from a
I don't know what they on. They on that shit Kodak Black be on. That's what they on.
1924 incident where members paraded with clubs. Because of this absence of physical violence,
This particular mask look kind of fly though. I ain't even gonna lie. He swore he was a Three Musketeer. I don't know what he got going on.
many historians tend to see
They wearing shit that Kanye West would make us wear. Low key.
KKK members, as well as women in racist movements in general, as obscure and relatively unimportant figures. They just see them as people who worked in the background of their men. But the fact is, the women KKK was very powerful. They were excellent manipulators. They used their social standing to further improve their agendas. Many of these members had organized social clubs before, so it was super easy for them to spread the word and destroy the reputations of political candidates or anyone else they deemed unworthy. These women tried to remove Catholic public school teachers, organized boycotts of businesses, and supported candidates who were aligned with the Klan. They increased their influence.
You know she hate us. You could tell by the way her face set up. Look.
Providing food baskets to needy families. They also arranged events like weddings, funerals, speeches, parades, christenings, carnivals, and lectures. By organizing both ceremonial and social activities, these women integrated the Klan and its beliefs into the everyday life of American society. In their minds, all the good people were a part of the Klan. These groups were unsettling, precisely because they seamlessly blended with small towns in America. WKKK didn't attract women because it was something new or unusual. No. It was popular because it aligned naturally with the lives of white Protestant Americans and their values and traditions. Many of these women viewed the Klan as a social club, an opportunity to have a good time with friends. But their shared commitment to racism and xenophobia was terrifying. Many of these white women were conservatives to the core. They were dedicated to the cause and had power within their communities. Some of these women were also active outside their homes. Lulu Markwell, for example, was the first national leader of the WKKK. She worked for women's suffrage in Indiana and other states. Daisy Douglas.
Some of these people was your nurses, bro. To this, even in this day, these your nurses, your doctors. These are the people that's you gotta trust with your life in certain situations, bro. And it ain't just white people, black people gotta be scared of too.
Led the Klan, but was also an esteemed Quaker preacher. This means that they had a huge impact on a much broader scale. As you can see, white women were not bystanders when it came to slavery and the slave trade. They were very much involved in the system as their male counterparts. The only thing is that many of these women were believed to be innocent and pure, while influenced by race.
Alright, well that's the end of the untold horrors of black male slaves by white women, man. Look, I need y'all to comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Yo, we out here, you feel me?